Hi there. I wasn't sure if you were just coming in as still part of the recording or if it was you for real. So
I'm for real, honey.
Yeah. So like I had announced before is that the American Addiction Centers and Drug Abuse say that the week between Christmas and New Year's, around the holiday season, that there is such an increase in people with family conflict, financial strain, loneliness, grief, depression, that and there's like 84% say that they are from moderate to overwhelmingly stressed out, and 29% of them say they drink more than they normally do during the holidays. And so we're going to be playing 3 different shows where Gail talks about the similarities of the AA and this work and offer that there are tools and you don't have to give in to that. And so one other thing that I wanted to do is that since Dr. Tim is not here this week, he's on vacation, and so we're doing this to fill in during his hour, is he's also been doing the Course in Miracles all year, and it's really kind of strange, but the lesson for every day this week is the exact same. It says, "This holy instant would I give to you, be you in charge, for I would follow you, certain that your direction gives me peace." And it's that same lesson every day this week. And I looked up the holy instant, and this is just from one source, so I'm sure different people have different perspectives on it. And it says, "The holy instant is a moment in which we temporarily set aside the past and enter into the timeless present, in which we momentarily transcend identification with illusions and recognize what is real." I don't know if you have something to add to that, or if you just want to take off then with the reading of the book and the second hour. Welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today's Monday, December 27th, 2021. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you in queue.
Well, my take on the holy instant is it's the moment where perception is collapsed. So when we tie together everything, you were talking about how you're talking about the levels of stress as though the holidays are the cause of stress. And when people understand what the real cause of stress is, then they can do something about it. And the real cause of stress isn't the holidays. It isn't, families getting together. It isn't all the things that the world tells us are stressful. The cause of stress is that we set a goal in our minds. And so, when you think about families who come together at holiday time that normally don't see each other, well, there are not active goals because I didn't see this person that I've got unresolved conflict with yesterday. I didn't see them the day before or the month before, but then if I come together at Christmas, the goals that I hold for them in my mind that they have not yet achieved become active again. Sometimes goals that go back years and years and years and years, and I have no idea that's what's creating my stress. If you look at the forgiveness process, each time one engages in first century Aramaic forgiveness, what they're doing is locating an active goal causes the mind to serve up some form of pained perception, canceling that goal, which collapses the pained perception and gives one the opportunity to have an holy instant. Now, that holy instant may be just an instant. In fact, it might go past so. The power person dynamic is installed in the mind when 3 things occur. 1, somebody has more power over my life at any given moment than I do. Usually it's when we're a child, but not always. 2, that person is not functioning as love. And 3, If I'm the object of that situation, then I perceive the situation or the circumstance as survival. When those three things come together, my energy field, if I'm the object of that situation, my energy field opens wide, and like a sponge, I absorb energetically every influence in the environment. In the future, the determiner of which perceptual constructs become active in my mind and thereby govern my behavior relate to the level of stress that I'm under. If there's no stress, I'll do whatever I did to get along with my power person. If stress starts to build, I'll do whatever I did to resist and survive with my power person. If I become ultra stressed, I will do what my power person did to me that I hated the most. I'll go into that behavior that I abhorred my power person doing. And the determiner of which level of behavior is active is the level of stress we're under. And we are the cause of the stress that we experience, not the circumstances that we're in. When you realize that, and then you realize that the core of forgiveness is about collapsing pain perception by locating the goal that's driving it and canceling that goal. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag. It literally translates to cancel. It doesn't actually translate forgive. And in any given circumstance, I'm in charge of the goals running my mind. And I can cancel those goals at any given moment. And when I do, my stress level will be reduced. So that's the bottom line of forgiveness, and we're getting close to the end of the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And we're walking the character in the book, Richard, through the forgiveness process. And I'm just at the point where I'm offering, if you're following along in the book, it's page 177. I'm just offering Richard, the character in the book, some input. Transforming all of the old dynamics in the mind is a process that takes time. Recall, there are years of old experiences and generations of beliefs and insane interactions to overcome. Eons. And when you recognize that everything that's stored in the mind is available to be resonated in any given circumstance, eons of what's called, quote-unquote, wandering in the desert in the ancient teachings are within each of our minds. This work is the core of the scriptural teachings that was veiled and available only to those who had the, quote-unquote, eyes to see and the ears to hear. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, Michael, but I'm glad I came. I'll do my work, and I'll even teach it to others. Great. Once you realize what is there to be done, what else is there to do? Let's cover the last step in the reality management sheet, and we can close for now. I want to be at the support team intensive next summer. How can I arrange that? Well, let's talk about that later and look at step 10, which you've already done, and then complete step 11. Step 10, I now feel, and Richard's input was, I feel cleansed and relieved, and I can see that neither of us deserved my hostility, and I have work to do. Richard said, it feels like I could write a novel on the insights that are coming from just a few hours of work that we've done, and this one worksheet. Where does it stop? I didn't believe anything so powerful could ever happen to me. Well, writing a book on your work today is a great idea, Richard. I might just do that. I remind you that what you have done is a process, and there are highs and lows. When lows come, remember the thought, this too shall pass. And it will. It can take up to 3 days if you do your work. I would suggest you put everything you are thinking into a journal and keep rereading it. It will be fertile ground for future insights and worksheet topics. And, we've repeated many, many times through the reading of the book the idea of watching your words, watching your language. People don't realize that they tell their life story by the words that they use. They may think they're describing something about other people, but in fact, the words people use describe the perceptual constructs of their minds. And so oftentimes, when someone observes what someone else is doing and says, and that means you're this, and you're that, and you're that, what they're really telling you is what's stored in their mind is information about themselves, and that information is projected into their brain's image of others. And so when someone ascribes a particular meaning to the behavior that someone does, oftentimes they're simply projecting the content of their own brain cell structure into their brain's image of someone else, and their words are really telling you all about themselves. I think that's what led Paul to write, nothing will remain hidden, everything will be made known in the light of day. You're always telling your story, and if you're always listening to the words that you use, then the words you use can cue you into what perhaps you've hidden from yourself. Which, again, another piece that Paul offered ties right into that when he said, beware you who judge another, for that in which you judge another, you've been practicing. Your words are reflecting the content of your mind, and not, if you really watch carefully, not even related to what's going on in the world. It takes great wisdom to understand that that's the game that the mind plays, and that we can change that game. In the final step of the reality management sheet, you purposely look for the love in the object of your worksheet, or the subject of your worksheet. Focus on what you want to create with them. Be clear that your focus is on exactly what you want from the situation. So remember when we did step 3, move to step 5 and located the goal, we're looking for the constructive result that your mind is wanting. Not what your mind doesn't want, but what your mind really does want. And now when we get to this step, we're looking at recreating consciously the true result that's desired. And that becomes the final step of the worksheet. And we've got another couple of days, so we'll savor the last couple of pages of the book. And Miss Jeanie, do we have anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet, so if someone presses 1, we have 43 minutes. We've got plenty of time to discuss anything and everything. So press 1.
Yeah, and coming up on the end of the year, what's on your mind? How can we support you? How are these tools fitting for you? Are there any questions about anything that we've discussed? Throughout the whole year, open mic. What's happening in your world? How can we be of support in bringing these tools of forgiveness forward in a way that really makes them functional and workable for you? So if you're out there in listener land or you're on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, the call-in number for the show is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. And then if you push 1, that raises a hand in the control panel. And Jeanie will see that you have a question or a thought for us, and she'll introduce you by your area code. So if you're out there in listener land, what can we do to support you? What's happening? Or, if you've made use of the tools throughout the years, how has it touched your life? What have you got something you can share that opens the space perhaps for someone else? The application of the tools could make the kind of changes that one gets to experience. And I'll just say that the objective long term of this work is to live in a mind that literally is a reflection of love and has resolved all forms of hostility or fear. The place where people start to utilize the forgiveness worksheet process, the reality management process, is usually where they have disturbance and upset. And the forgiveness process is designed to literally collapse the pained perceptions in the mind in on themselves, give one a chance to bring forward the unconscious dynamic, the hidden part of the mind that's at the root of all pain perception, and ultimately forgive those perceptions based in pain, which means that you get to live in a peaceful mind. Now, there can still be turmoil and conflict and things happening around you, but if you freed your mind from its turmoil, then the perceptual constructs of your mind will not contain turmoil. You may see that it's there in the world, people are in conflict or what have you, but you don't have to be in a disturbed state because you've removed disturbance from your mind. Only a disturbed mind can reflect or speak about how disturbed it is. And it's disturbed because there is content in that mind, and this is a hard thing to understand for most people, because not understanding how perception is created, if a particular situation or circumstance resonates disturbance in the mind, resonates that which is less than love, then that which is less than love starts to move and creates disturbance in the mind. If you've applied forgiveness in those circumstances, let's say, let's go back over the worksheet that our character Richard has just done. He had a sister that he perceived as having life easy, and he was jealous and angry because he had it so difficult. And he can see how that disturbance, jealousy, that irritation over somebody else having it easy while he's had it so difficult, has pervaded his whole life, every relationship, every circumstance, and it's pervaded his life because it's in his mind. People will say, well, I'm upset about that. I'm angry at that. Excuse me. My offering is, you've never been upset about anything, and you've never been angry about anything. Well, Michael, I certainly have been upset and angry. Oh, I didn't say you've never been upset or angry. I'm saying you haven't been upset or angry about what you think you're upset or angry about. If you're upset and angry, or it's because there are perceptual constructs called upset and anger in you. Now, you can put them on, circumstance A, B, C, D, E, all the way down to Z. And you can pretend it's about that. But my offering is, you're never upset about that. You're upset because there's a perceptual construct, there's data in your mind that contains upset. If you choose to forgive as to that upset, and those two little words, and I can remember in the early days of working with the Aramaic, it was difficult for my mind to grasp this idea. But each time that the scriptures that the Greeks translated for you said that the man Yeshua told you to forgive someone, he never said to forgive anyone in Aramaic. There are two words that are missing. Every time they translate, where ostensibly the Greek translations of those scriptures say, forgive your brother, Yeshua doesn't say, forgive your brother. He never does. Yeshua says, forgive as to your brother. And I can remember that was difficult, for my mind in particular, to grasp way back in the early days. What do you mean, forgive as to your brother? Well, if there's an interaction with your brother, and your brother does a behavior that resonates some sort of pain, turmoil, or unresolved conflict in your mind, it's not your brother he's instructing to forgive. So when you add those words as to, he's saying, long form, your brother did a behavior that has resonated a painful construct in you, and you need to forgive as to what he has resonated in you, not forgive him. So the Greek translations that did this whole forgiveness con of, they did something that caused all this pain and turmoil in me. And you'll notice that every time you've been in pain and turmoil, you've been there. Your pain and turmoil is about you. It's not about somebody else. And so when I forgive as to my brother, if my brother resonates pain or turmoil in me, I apply forgiveness to the pain and turmoil that my brother has aroused in me. So I'm forgiving as to my brother. I'm not forgiving my brother. Never forgive anyone for anything. And the reason I say that is because you can't. Forgiveness isn't about the Greek idea that's captured most of the world. Oh, I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. Forgiveness is the tool with which, if I'm in disturbance and my brother has resonated that disturbance, and I have transparently used that disturbance to build my brain's image of my brother, and I think that it's this picture in the mind that I've constructed that's the cause of my disturbance, I forgive as to my brother, and I collapse that picture. When I collapse that picture, I have direct access to the disturbance that I've projected into my brain's image of another. And I get to get free of the conflict because I've stepped up to the plate and taken responsibility and done my forgiveness work. So in essence, that word forgive represents a tool with which, if you're in pain or you're in disturbance, and it can be the slightest thing. It can be something that is ancient. There's a great line in the Course in Miracles that says, there is no place upon the earth that is so holy as the place where an ancient hatred becomes a present love. We had what I felt was a pretty powerful conversation with Dusty on Friday. And he was talking about some experiences that he had as a child and how those experiences were traumas that carried over into other areas of his life. And as he was able to language about his memories of that, the awareness that those memories reflected energetic patterns that today could be forgiven. For me, I felt like it was a really powerful conversation for some, and one could say, well, yeah, but that was so long ago and it's no big deal now. Well, it may not seem to be a big deal now, but if it's still being carried in the mind and I choose to apply forgiveness, I can quiet those parts of my mind. I can free myself from those old conflicts. And to me, that's where the Course gives us that thought, that there's no place so holy upon the earth as a place where an ancient hatred becomes a perfect love, a present love. And in all the years I've been developing this work, I've worked specifically with the Aramaic a little better than 40 years, and overall spent the last 50 years developing this work. There are only two places on planet Earth where I have found an exact and specific definition of forgiveness. How do you forgive? One, and this is where I first built the brain cells and started to understand and unravel what the concept of forgiveness was. And in the Aramaic language, the word they've translated as forgive is shabag, which literally means to cancel. Now, in any given circumstance, I guess I could cancel you, which, that's murder. That's probably not a good idea. I could cancel myself, suicide, not a good idea. Or I could recognize the goal that's causing my mind to use unresolved, pained content, and I can apply forgiveness. I can cancel that goal, thereby collapsing the pain content aroused by my engaging in that goal. So that's the Aramaic idea of forgiveness. And then, after many years of working with A Course in Miracles, I came across the definition of forgiveness there. I had the brain cells from working with the Aramaic to recognize in the Course where it defines forgiveness. And if I remember correctly, I believe it's workbook lesson 305 and paragraph 7, if I remember correctly. And it says this. It gives us a piece of advice. And what it says is, let go all the things you think you want, your goals. And then it says your trifling treasure. So what the Course is saying is, if you've got a goal for anyone, anything, anytime, anywhere, and that becomes more important than you living as a human being, as love, then you've got a trifling treasure. So let go all the things you think you want, your trifling treasure put away, and leave a clean and open space within your mind for the active presence of love to come. When you put away your trifling treasure, when you cancel the goal that you hold in any given circumstance, by canceling that goal, you've removed the driver that causes your mind to use particular disturbing, unresolved, energetic patterns from the past to build your perception at the moment. That trifling treasure away, all of a sudden what you've done is you've collapsed the perceptual construct of the moment. So now there's a clean and open space in the conscious mind. It isn't filled with all of the pain and turmoil and upset and disturbance of the past. And that clean and open space leaves or creates a space where the root of that pain perception now can become directly available. And when you create that clean and open space, and you have, as we put forward in step 4 in the current worksheet, you've tapped into conscious, active, present love. The underlying pain content hidden by the perceptual mind all of a sudden becomes available. And when it becomes available in the presence of active love, then that pained content dissipates and you're freed from it. Let go. All the things you think you want. Leave a clean and open space within your mind for the active presence of love to dissolve underlying hidden pained dynamics in the mind. We tend to function out of the same trifling treasures as our ancestors taught us were important. And, generations and generations and generations of living in hostility or fear, all sorts of things seem to be important that mean absolutely nothing. The adult has something it wants from the child. Let's say a new toy, and the adult wants the child to play with the toy properly. The kid's got no brain cells for what property means. But if the adult has, these pieces need to be handled this way and ordered that way and assembled that way and done this way and done that way, and this has to be done with it. And the child, having no idea, having no brain cells for any of that, picks it up and scatters it to the wind. The pieces are all over the place. The child has no idea. The adult's mind has ordered it that it would be this way, that the adult's mind has goals. You see, we do this like this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and then you see the project is complete. The child has no goal to complete the project. The child goes, what wonderful colors. I wonder what's going to happen if I throw the ball up in the air. And the adult, having the goal for the pieces to be ordered properly, perceives the child throwing these wonderful colors up in the air to just see them fly as some sort of an offense and goes into a fit of rage. The child just delighting in watching the colors fly. The child doesn't know you don't want the pieces on the floor. The child doesn't know that you have anything like that in your mind whatsoever. And the adult, all of a sudden, having created a stress, a goal for the child to behave in a certain way that matches the adult's brain cells, the child has no concept. And, maybe, the adult saw this as, you're destroying this toy. Where the child is watching colors fly and thinks it's wonderful. And the adult labels the child as somehow destructive and shoots a look and a vibration of rage and judgment at the child that the child has no concept of and in no way, shape, or form is deserving of. That's where, sadly, in our culture, a child is often labeled as a bad child. Once the child takes on the identity bad, then the child is going to behave. That's what led the ancient scriptures to say, look to the lives of the fathers, and of course it's not just the fathers, but the fathers, the mothers, the authorities. Look to the lives of the authorities, for ours are but a shadow. If there's the child, becomes a shadow, and generation after generation becomes shadow after shadow after shadow, until we're so far away from anything that has anything to do with human life. What we're looking to do with this work is to restore each adult, each child, And it doesn't matter how bizarre and outrageous the adult is. The idea is to hold a space for restoration to the true state of being. It doesn't matter what level of authority you're at in the world. If you're functioning out of the judgments that were put on a child, I mean, you could be the president. And if you're functioning out of the judgments that were put on a child, then your behavior can be as outrageous as a 3-year-old. In fact, it may well be the behavior of a 3-year-old. Railing against being judged, railing against not getting its way, railing against not being able to control everybody and everything. And as we wake up to who we are and forgive those dynamics by, in any given moment where there's disturbance or upset, canceling, letting go of the trifling treasure, allowing the pain perception to collapse in on itself, bringing the root of that pain perception forward in the presence of love and being freed from the past. That is forgiveness. The tool that's missing from the world today. And if that makes sense for you and it's working for you and fits for you, please take these tools and pass them on. You know, you can hand people 3 simple words: Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. Go type that into your app store, and you'll be looking at the world's first and only forgiveness app. And it gives you instructions how to walk through the whole thing. You can go to our website. There are dozens of radio shows where we've walked somebody through the whole worksheet process, step by step by step. There are the instructions for how to do it. You can print the worksheets off from the website, whyagain.org. You can do the worksheet on the website. You can do the worksheet in the app itself. Again, just go to your app store on your phone, type in Heartland, Heartland, one word, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. Put the pen to the paper, keystroke to the paper, engage in forgiveness, and watch how the mind changes. Watch what happens. Pass it on. Our commitment is to make this available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet, and that's what we're here to do. And so, Miss Jeanie, we are, goodness sakes, we've got less than 20 minutes left. Do we have anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue or anything happening in the chat room?
No, we don't. I was just trying to find that quote about looking to the lives of the fathers. Is that in Scripture or where was that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I'd have to Google it. I'm not very good at doing chapter and verse. Let's take a quick look.
It must just be worded a little different. I'm not finding it. I'm doing Google.
Could
right
well
now.
be. To the lives of the fathers.
I found one similar. Inquire of the past generations and consider the discoveries of the fathers. For we were born yesterday and knew nothing. Our days on this earth are but a shadow.
A shadow. There it is. That is worded differently, but that's it. That's the core of that idea, that our lives are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. If we start looking at the mind energy that has run those who live in insanity, and we're willing to face that in us, and we can change that shadow. We can stop living in the shadow of those unresolved generational dynamics. So that would be a good quote to put in the notes for today, and that's it exactly. Would you read it again, sweetie?
Yeah, it says, and it's actually in Job, and it says, Inquire of past generations and consider the discoveries of their fathers. For we were born yesterday and know nothing. Our days on earth are but a shadow. Will they not teach you and tell you and speak from their understanding?
Powerful. And, of course, the idea of this work is to live an original life, not to live in the shadow of the fathers, not to just replicate the generational patterns. Otherwise, we get to live in the desert. And you look at that concept of the desert in the ancient scriptures, and it's got nothing to do with a hot, sandy place where they talk about, being lost in this, what's interpreted as a physical desert for 40 years. When you think about that one, what do we got? 35 square mile area, and you think that people who understand astronomy could possibly be lost in a 35 square mile area and not find their way out for 40 years? I mean, that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous. But when you realize that they're metaphorically talking about being stuck in a pattern, the desert is the unconscious, an unconscious pattern. And to rid oneself of the unconscious pattern is to forgive, is to move out of those generational patterns. That adult that said the child is supposed to function this way, the child who's just alive, functioning of a life and aliveness and joy at the moment, messing up what the fathers want, what the ancestor wants. It's supposed to be this way. That we can be loosed from those generational patterns by an act of forgiveness. It's pretty powerful, pretty profound when we realize what it was really all about, and as opposed to those who would teach us that it's about being stuck in doctrine and dogma. It's about being alive. You go to Yeshua, and he has a pretty singular purpose. He's pretty clear on what it's about. It's about, I come to bring you life and bring you life more abundantly, to live as the active presence of love, as a human being. And that's what we're here to support. That's what we're here to do. And so, do you have any other thoughts, sweetie? Do we have anybody with a hand up?
No, it is all quiet. We have 13 minutes. We've got plenty of time for a topic. Somebody press 1.
Yeah, it would be nice to have more conversation. And, the monologue portion is over. We're up for some dialogue. If you're out there in listener land, you have a thought for us, you have a question, push 1. Let's have a conversation. And if there's no conversation to be had, then maybe we just let the show go for today, and we'll get to playing with Aria Rain a little bit. It was really kind of fun this morning. I was going out to feed the worms in the garden. We have a little place where the worms are dug well into the ground and are quite active. So we went out to put the compost in the worm bin, and we have a small garden space. It's about 8 feet by 12 feet, and we've got parsley and sage and a couple different kinds of mint, and some lettuces growing. Aria's got all these new toys. Yeah, it's covered, but Aria's got all these toys in the house, and she decides she's going to come out with me, and she's going to help me feed the worms. And we get her a plastic glove. She doesn't want to get her hands dirty, but it used to be the worms were there, and she'd grab them and just hang out with them. Well, now she wants a plastic glove on, so I put a glove on her. But she still didn't want to touch me with the glove on. But once we finished, went around and said, well, should we open the front of the garden up? Do you want to see how the plants are doing? Oh, yeah. And literally for about 40 minutes, this child who's now about 3.5, been circling the earth for about 3.5 years, all these toys sitting inside that she'd been playing with. And what she does, there's a little stone path in the middle of the garden, and she just walks back and forth, picks a lettuce leaf out of the garden and eats it, walks back and forth, picks a leaf of parsley, picks a leaf of mint, and literally for 40 minutes just hung out, just kind of prancing back and forth in the garden, just having a blast with it.
Petting the plants.
Oh yeah, she's petting the plants. we actually did a video. Jeanie came out. I've been hanging out with her for a while, and Jeanie came out, and when we stepped into the garden space, we've got a plastic door that we just use clamps to hold in place, and I had to open. So Jeanie went in with her, and Ari explained how she was petting the plants, and she said, and I'm going to be a plant now. And literally, she sat down on this stone walkway and just kind of folded her arms in and folded her head in and just rolled herself up in a ball. And then she gave Jeanie instructions. You're supposed to pet me so I'll grow. So Jeanie went over and she just kind of patted her on the back of the head. And she says, oh, I need some water. And we've got a plastic cover, and the evaporation is on the cover. So all I have to do is hit the frame of the garden, and the water drops down. So I hit the frame, and it drops. Oh, it's been watered. And she just gets up and stretches her arms up, head up high, tall, and she's now a happy plant. And then she said, Jeanie, it's your turn. No, you have to get down. You have to fold up. And I'll pet you and I'll water you, and then, okay, now you can grow. And it was just awesome to watch her ignoring all these new toys that she's got and just hanging out in the garden. It's like, wow, what a gift. So.
And while the earth would probably like to have some cold weather, it's nice that we can be out there in just our shirt sleeves and hanging out in the garden.
Yeah, we've definitely got, for our human purposes, some pretty nice days, but I'm sure the earth, I was looking at a video this morning that was talking about Venice, Italy, and that 2 of the worst floods in their history happened this past November. And they're seeing the city moving into ruin, that salt water is going to places it's never been in all of history. But because of the raising of the water levels, they're talking about destruction of this, priceless basilica and an opera house that is being destroyed, and that their flooding conditions are worse than, literally in their whole recorded history. And, of course, we have oil companies that convince people that, there's no problem. We can just use all the fossil fuels we want. And, so the ice caps melt. So there's all this fresh water. And it's just so bizarre what's happening on a global scale for money. And time for us to wake up and take action. So. One of the actions we're taking is restoring soil here in Bristol, Virginia, to the degree that we can. If you do some research, there are a couple of really powerful films out there. You can watch them free online. One of them is Kiss the Earth. And Woody Harrelson narrates that, and they're talking about how to sequester carbon in the earth, and that's something that on a practical level could actually be done to change this whole dynamic of what's happening with carbon and all the dynamics going on. Anyway, it's a powerful film. Take a look at it, and then just go to YouTube University, click into YouTube, and put in some search terms about restoring soil, and look at what is happening when we engage in, when we buy our food unconsciously and engage in commercial farming that is so destructive to the soil, and start to change the dynamic. Each one can make a difference, and so they're all things that are part of the game of waking up to who we are as human beings and how we are designed to be stewards of this world, and rather than raping it and using it for our own purposes, that we can live cooperatively with the soil and with the earth, and change the game for future generations. And we can play and have fun while we do it. And so if there's nobody out there for the question, last call, I would rather continue the conversation for the next 8 minutes. But if we're complete, then we'll just say thank you for joining us and create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. the world needs the gift, you can give it. Blessings.